That's why Ohio State gets worn down. So when you've been doing this as long as I have, you have the ability to talk to different people across, all sorts of spectrums, and they'll just tell you what they see here from their, world. And I was talking with somebody earlier this year. I don't know if they just like sort of watched the Ohio State Georgia game not that long ago, the Peach Bowl. It's just what an unbelievable game. But their take on things was, and I'll actually show it to you right here on Dog Post. This is an article I have linked below. Make sure you're checking it out, okay? It says all off season, talking about what one SEC assistant had to say about Alabama and Georgia, comparatively speaking to the rest of college football. They argue. Oh, I can see it's not quite on the screen. Here we go. Meanwhile, one SEC assistant had this to say comparing Georgia, Bama, and the rest of college football. All offseason, that player is scared as blank he's going to lose his job. That coach said of players at Bama and Georgia. That's what depth gives you. That's why Alabama and Georgia do what they do. That's why Ohio State gets worn down in the second half. That person obviously not an assistant in the Big Ten. So we're going to see. We're going to see over time if that changes from the Georgia perspective, from the Bama perspective, from the Ohio State perspective. We're going to see if all that changes. And I can just tell you, I was talking about earlier this week about Deshaun Edwards, right? I mean, the depth at running back, you've got a plethora of players at a lot of different positions. This one thing we talk about in the 23 preview edition. I break down the entire position by position. There's a position by position breakdown of all of the spots at Georgia. I mean, Marius Mims he didn't even start most of the games last season. This guy's going to be nothing but trouble. There's just no shortage of players in Athens. That all three of these guys return on the offensive line says something else about this team. It is the depth. It scares people half to death. When you pick up double dogs, you'll get our 2023 preview. I continue to make that mistake. It is the 2023 preview. It'd be a heck of a statement to already have the 2024 preview ready to go. I think Ohio State, though, I've talked a lot about Ohio State lately, partly because I've been watching that Peach Bowl game, which was one of the amazing games in college football in the last decade. I don't think that's an exaggeration, particularly considering everything that was at stake at that moment. I mean, look at this picture that Dylan Weber got. This is a picture of Kirby Smart calling that timeout right as that punt happened. And here's A.D. Mitchell, Texas Longhorn A.D. Mitchell, catching the game-winning touchdown with 54 seconds left to play. I can assure you that Kirby Smart was not pleased with Stetson Bennett at that moment. He was happy that they scored, but Stetson didn't quite get that whole thing right. He should have run the clock more. But why does Georgia grind Missouri down? Why do they win out at the end against Ohio State? Why does Alabama beat Texas? Why do they hold on against Texas A&M? Why do these two programs win tight games late? I mean, it is the depth. It is being scared S-less, And there's something to be said for that. The constant competition, the repetition of competition, if you will, that these programs have. They are always all over everybody. If you're not the best player, if you're Quay Walker and you can't seem to get onto the field, it doesn't mean you still won't be a first-round draft pick. Same thing with Devontae and Jordan Davis. I mean, Jordan Davis wasn't a starter at the beginning of his career at Georgia. He wasn't a 3-and-out. So, what's Devontae doing that gets him on the field as a starter at Georgia? I mean, whatever it is, he had to do it. And it wasn't delivering the mail. It was constantly doing work. It was never ending. Now, Ohio State, I think it's a bit of a jab at Ohio State to say that's why Bama and Georgia do it and Ohio State doesn't. I mean, I still think Ohio State's going to win a national championship in the future. I mean, I don't think Clemson will, if you're asking me that question. I don't think that we're anywhere close to Florida winning the national championship. But these other programs, yeah, probably. But I don't, this can go away. You're not going to win the national championship every single season. And Bama has not won the national championship in front of a full stadium of its fans, or like a whatever you want to call it. That hasn't happened in a while, since 17, because 20, was a very limited crowd when they beat Ohio State. But that gets back to the point, like, Ohio State has to have a breakthrough, just like Georgia did. Nobody's going to say this about Georgia now. They're just not going to. Why? Because they want it. It's simple. I'm not saying it's right. It's simple. It's what it is. If you do the work and win, you are congratulated. If you do the work and you don't win, people question you. It's just what it is. And, I think really, you look at Auburn with Hugh Freeze they're trying to get it back. Like, they're trying to get this thing going again. By the way, our DoorDash offer still stands. You can pick up the link down below. Use use Dawg Post Summer. You're going to get 50% off your first order, okay? And that's a great deal. First 50% off your first order, $20. DoorDash. Use the app to get whatever delivered to your house. You don't have to cook, clean, just eat, put it in the trash. That sounds awesome, by the way. But take advantage of that today. But, Auburn's trying to get it back together, and they might, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. Can everybody have depth the way that Bama and Georgia do right now? Probably 4 teams in college football can. Probably 4. The problem, too, the person I was talking to, they might not have just meant the Georgia game that Ohio State lost the Peach Bowl. They might not have meant that one. They might not have meant the 2020 National Championship game where Ohio State got blown out. They may have meant the Michigan game in back-to-back years. That style, Georgia's style, Michigan's style, that Ohio State just doesn't match up with that. They can't, they're not so great at battle rams, where you're having to fight the whole game. I don't know. They fought really hard and played well against Notre Dame, Ohio State. They did. That was a home game. I thought Notre Dame hung in there pretty good for a team that was about to lose to Marshall. So, they did what you needed to do. But there's something missing right now. And that's going to be the problem for Ohio State to figure out. I don't know. By the way, the article's not just about Ohio State. That's the last thing I write about, actually, is that. I'm talking about the Gators here. And, boy, that's a sensitive crowd right now. They should be sensitive, though. It's not going well. Down there. I talked about already Greg McElroy about his thoughts on Georgia's schedule in 2023. But this is sort of insider stuff that you're not going to get anywhere else. We don't pull any punches. We don't work for the university. They're not our friends. We cover Georgia. We don't, if you want the unfiltered truth as we see it, Dawg Post is the place for you. I'd encourage you to click the article and give it a try. But insofar as the Ohio State discussion is concerned, they're going to have to win the national championship. And trust me, if Georgia doesn't win it in the next 4 seasons, the same sort of pressure is going to be on Kirby. And, like I was talking about, I do think Ohio State will win the national championship. Clemson? No, not right now. They're going to have to prove it otherwise for me. And I just don't – I think there's too many clouds in the sky against them. It's about to start raining on them. You got Florida State in the way. Georgia's become a national power in a time that, that really wasn't the case in the buildup for Clemson. Will Florida State win a national championship? I don't see that right now, no. But I think there are probably 8 national championship coaches out there. And some of them, the door has closed. Dabo, it looks like one of them, Jimbo. I mean, you don't want to end in Bo, maybe, but it looks like Kirby, Ryan Day, Brian Kelly, who's not won one yet, obviously Nick, and I will say Jim Harbaugh too. You don't want the window to close on you though either, brother. I mean, and it can. And all these coaches know that. That's the thing. They all know that the window can close. And Harbaugh is a very good example of the opposite of what I'm about to say. But usually once it starts closing on you, you're done. But he, to his credit, I mean, he's a really good coach. I don't think people... I don't think people understand. This guy's been a coach of a Super Bowl, okay? So there's not a lot of those guys out there. This guy has done a very good job for a long time in college football coaching and in the NFL. But he's got to quit yanking chains up there at Michigan. I mean, you're either going to be the coach or you're not. Like, you got to quit this stuff. But there's not a lot of coach. Shane Beamer, probably not. No. Josh Heupel at Tennessee, probably not. No, I don't think so. Billy Napier at Florida, no. So there's, you've got multiple coaches right now that are out there have won national championships. Kirby, Nick, Dabo, Jimbo, Mac Brown, right? I think it's just those five. Someone else can correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't think those ACC coaches, I don't think that those guys, Mac Brown and Dabo, are positioned to fight these fights moving forward. And they can prove me wrong. Clemson does not have the depth of these other schools. They just don't. And they don't have the quarterback that they had either. You look at Florida State. When did they win? What did they have? They had a rock star quarterback. This guy was the real deal, certainly in college. So, it's tough out there. And winning national championships is not a simple thing. But you'll know the problems have started at Georgia when you see them collapsing in the fourth quarter. Not just once, but like in back-to-back games. Remember that Ohio State, let me just look this up real quick, though. I don't want to say it without it being accurate, but I'm pretty sure that Ohio State and Michigan, that Ohio State at least was competitive in the third quarter, and they just fell apart. Yeah, I mean, like in 21, they were down 1 at the half. And that's not a big deal. And then in 22, they were winning. No, they were winning by 3. And they just got their ass whipped in the second half. So it's a bad phenomenon to be a part of.